2018, I had the pleasure of riding nearly 70 roller coasters, and today I'm going to be counting down my top 25. Now, like everyone else's lists, this is all my opinion, and unlike other people, I have a very specific taste. I like very fun rides. I do like my intense rides, but that's my main thing is I like fun. So every ride on this list is very different than what you'd probably see on other people's lists. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Number 25 is Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. Now, while I realize this ride has good airtime, a very unique and fun layout, and a very intense helix, it is without a doubt probably the rattliest B&M I've been on. I don't know if it's just me, but this ride is pretty rough. I mean, it's a fun hyper, but I think it's severely overrated and nowhere near the best hyper in the US. Wow. Now, you want to talk about a ride that absolutely blew my expectations. Raging Bull completely tops that list. People compare this to Goliath at Magic Mountain because it's more of a hyper twister coaster and doesn't focus on the airtime too much, but this blows Goliath completely out of the water. The main thing that makes this ride absolutely outstanding is that drop. Now, seeing the pre-drop on POVs like this in Apollo made this ride, I thought the drop always looked dumb and the layout looked boring, but wow, is this ride so fun. The ejector you get on that drop is standing and it's so fun. Now, the airtime through the rest of the ride is probably the floatiest airtime you'll ever experience. Just going over the hills, you slowly float over, and that first hill, both rides I got was super trimmed, but wow, what a super fun and smooth ride. Absolutely loved it. Blew my expectations away, and definitely underrated coaster here. Number 23 is a fan favorite from my home park, SheiKra. While this ride is just pretty much 2 drops and a couple turns and the Immelman, it's still always just a fun ride. The splashdown's fun, and I recently got to tour this ride, which was also super fun. Just always a good time on SheiKra. Number 22 is an example of one of those rides I like just for their pure fun factor, that being Great American Scream Machine at Six Flags Over Georgia. While this ride can be pretty rough and it can shuffle through the layout, it doesn't matter when you have those amazing buzz bars and you're getting that great airtime this ride gives. The airtime on this ride with those buzz bars just gives me so much more hype for Phoenix and Coaster and actually smoother rides that give that amazing ejector. This is such a long, fun ride that you're just bouncing out of your seat, smiling the whole ride, and I absolutely love it. Number 21 is the absolutely crazy mind blower at Fun Spot Kissimmee. This was such a great investment for the park and gives some of the best airtime in the state, probably the second best behind Mako. The only problem is I rode this only a couple months after it opened and it was already rough. But thankfully it wasn't the track that was rough, it was more of just the wheels and how they were running on the track. It just wasn't right. If they can get new wheels on this and it can run smoother, this will definitely be one of the best coasters in the state. You give some great airtime, the inversion is fantastic, every element is so fun. They just need to work on that one little problem and this ride will move up so much further. Breaking into the top 20 is Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm. I didn't really know what to expect going into this ride because it was my first Gerstlauer and I really hadn't heard much since this ride is pretty much brand new, but I liked it overall. It was a pretty smooth, fun ride, had one good airtime moment, but the worst part of this ride, surprisingly, was the drop. I rode it in the back row, and you just crawl over it, and you barely feel it once you're at the bottom. Besides that, it was a pretty fun ride, and it looks really amazing at night. Number 19 is a personal favorite of mine, Manta at SeaWorld Orlando. This was my first B&M coaster, and oh boy was it a good one to start out on. Unlike another B&M flyer you'll see up ahead on this list, this ride is insanely intense. The forces you feel at the bottom of that pretzel loop are unbelievable, and the splashdown and other effects on this ride make this such a great icon and such a fun ride for SeaWorld. Number 18 is the better of the 2 Fun Spot Woodies in my opinion, White Lightning. While on the surface, these coasters seem pretty similar, both 2 Woodies with short heights. They couldn't be more different. White Lightning is definitely more of a family coaster compared to Mind Blower, and that's why I like it. It's smoother, it's GCI, and it has very good airtime. The airtime is definitely more floater feeling than the ejector that Mind Blower gives, but it's just such an enjoyable ride. I could literally ride this all day. and with the crowds at Fun Spot, it's not hard. Number 17 is Kraken. Oh, Kraken. What used to be probably my favorite coaster in the park has definitely dropped a couple spots recently, due to some dumb choices the park has made. Mainly the one problem everybody hates about this ride right now is the VR. When it's working, thankfully it's been a bit sporadic, but when it is on, oh god, get ready to wait upwards of an hour for this ride, and what used to be probably the easiest coaster to marathon in the park. That, and this ride has gotten a bit rougher lately, and the layout, I've realized, is a bit more boring than some of the other B&M floorless coasters out there. But overall, this is still a pretty great ride, some surprisingly good forces, and such a great history. Love Kraken. One-upping Kraken is Riddler's Revenge. While a lot of people have a stigma about stand-up coasters, including me a little bit, the forces you feel on this ride are undeniably great. The layout's a bit repetitive, you feel like you keep doing dive loops over and over, but overall, this is such a fun ride, and that new color scheme is so great. Such a great stand-up coaster, and such a fun ride for the park. Starting off the top 15 is Superman Escape from Krypton. While this ride is even more gimmicky than Top Thrill Dragster and King Ka, I found it even more enjoyable than King Ka, which is the only one of those I've ridden. The launch is so long and fun, but unfortunately, when I went, I wasn't going anywhere near the red on that launch. But the launch is so fast and forceful. That's really the only one trick of this ride, but wow, does it do it well. I was super impressed by this ride. So much fun, but wow, is it loud. Coming in at 14 is Full Throttle. Wow, is this one a fun ride. The hang time you get on that loop is so good, but the best ride of this ride, without question, is that dive loop, both ways. The first time you go in, you enter it so forceful, and when you're in the back row, you get launched up so high that hang time is fantastic. But that's about it. You go over the top, and that's the end of the ride. So the only problem is that this ride is so short for the main attraction it should be. But for what it is, it's such a great launch coaster and so much fun. Coming in at 13 is another launch coaster, Cheetah Hunt. While Full Throttle may be short, this ride is the complete opposite. People love this ride for its length. It is one long ride. And it's pretty fun too. It's gotten a little rattly over the years, but it's still a great fun ride. Still definitely the most popular in the park, and always such a great treat. Also gives amazing night rides. Number 12 is the giant flying coaster Tatsu. This ride really surprised me. Given its size, I expected it to be much more intense than Manta, but when I got to the bottom of that pretzel loop, I was shocked at how forceless this ride is. But thankfully, that's actually in a good way. This ride gives the flying experience a lot more than Manta. The feeling of flying is really nice, especially that one turn over the main pathway over the entrance. And it's just a very relaxing, fun ride. I would have liked it a little more if it was intense, but overall it's super fun and I would just ride this all day long. Number 11 is Mindbender. Okay, now we're getting to the rides I really love. I love Schwarzkopf coasters, and this is definitely the best of those I've been on. The loops are so good, and the most surprising part of this ride is the air time. The air time on the two drop-offs the mid-courses are fantastic. And that weird dive loop thing you do is so intense. The location, the waterfall, everything about this ride is so fun. Such an underrated coaster, and I think the best coaster at Over Georgia, even though I haven't been on Twisted Cyclone yet. And now we've reached the top 10. And yes, I still love this ride. Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket. This ride is so bizarre and so wonky that I cannot help but love it. But it's really good. The airtime into the brake runs, I know that sounds funny because they're brake runs, but the airtime, you just get thrown like a rag doll in and out of them. And the transitions on this ride are crazy. The non-inverting loop is so intense. The helix where you dive down is so fun. And some of these overbanks and these weird turns are just so great. And the music adds so much. This is a severely underrated ride. Maybe it's a bit overrated by me, but oh my gosh, this ride does not deserve the hate it gets. Such an amazing coaster. Number 9 is Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. I wasn't expecting much from this ride, given I've been on Kingda Ka and I wasn't that much in love with it, and the fact that this ride didn't open until 3 o'clock that day. So I wasn't even expecting it to open, let alone be good. But oh my god, this launch. I know it's a lot to say one element changes an entire ride, but that launch is unbelievable. And not only that, but you get airtime coming over and down the drop in the front row. Back row is pretty good too, but oh my gosh, the launch in the front row is insane. The turns after are even good too. The second bank turn's a little bit better, but wow, such a great coaster. This gets me so hyped for rides like Storm Runner and other intimate accelerators like Top Thrill Dragster, which people say are even better than this. Loved Accelerator. Number 8 is Goliath at Six Flags Great America. I've got to be honest, this is definitely my least enthusiastic ride about being in my top 10. I know this is an RMC, and riding this 2 weeks after Twisted Colossus made my expectations skyrocket even more, even though I knew it wasn't going to be nowhere near as good. But wow, this is one short ride. And not only that, I got 2 rides in a row without leaving my seat, but they were in about 11 in the morning, so the coaster hadn't heated up yet. So it was not even coming close to hauling as much as Twisted Colossus was at Magic Mountain. But for what it does, it's still an amazing ride. The zero G-roll is probably the best part. The dive loop is pretty good, and that drop is pretty fun. This might be my most controversial choice, but number 7 for me is Manta at SeaWorld San Diego. I was so excited for this ride. This was one of my top 3 coasters I was looking forward to for my California trip, and it did not let me down. I just wanted to see what Mack multi-launch coasters were like, and seeing that announcement with Copperhead Strike, I couldn't be more excited after this. Yeah, this is definitely 100% a family coaster. It feels like it doesn't get over 30 feet over the ground, but wow, does it deliver. The airtime is pretty solid, but the turns, everything, this is the most fun coaster I've ever been on. I could literally ride this all day and never get bored. Not only that, the theming and the launch tunnel is really nice, and shocking to me is that this ride actually has an unload station, so the operations on this ride are outstanding. I always feel like I was getting 30-second dispatches at times. Such an underrated, fun coaster here at SeaWorld. Number 6 is Mako. Wow, what a fun ride. That airtime on this ride is great. Now this ride, yes, it does have that trim. It does have the mid-course and the wonky ending, but overall, this gives the strongest airtime by far of any B&M Hyper I've been on. The theme is fun, the colors are beautiful, probably the most beautiful coaster I've been on. And overall, just such a fun, outstanding coaster. Number 5 is Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. By far the best wooden coaster I've been on. This GCI retracking made this ride so smooth. Beautifully smooth. The length is so good. The layout's pretty good. And this airtime on this ride is pretty fun. The helix at the end is my favorite part, to be honest. The way you keep diving down and turning, so much fun. Great theme, but unfortunately this is by far the most popular ride at Knott's, at least when I was there. Constantly at a 2-hour wait the entire day, even when hang time was brand new. But still, absolutely fantastic coaster. Get out and ride this as soon as you can. Coming in at number 4 is the amazingly intense and historic X2. This coaster's probably impossible to rank because it's almost nothing like anything you've been on unless you've been on each Nika and Dinoconda. But for what it is, this is probably the most intense coaster definitely the most intense coaster I've ever been on. Yeah, it's I don't even know what to say about it really. Unfortunately, I rode this 3 times and none of them the onboard audio worked. Thankfully the flamethrowers did, but wow. Every element on this ride is intense, but it might be a little bit too much for me. That That outward Raven turn at the end smashed my head into the restraint, and oh my gosh. It's not the coaster I would want to marathon, but for what it is, I really appreciate it, and for historical reasons, I pretty much love this ride. Coming in at number 3 is the B&M Beast Kumba. Yeah, this is the second most intense coaster I've been on, but that's what I like more about it. It's not too crazy, it's just the perfect amount of intensity for me. It holds it throughout, and it's such a fun ride. So photogenic, such a fun marathonable coaster. Kumba is so classic, and I always return to the park to ride it. Beating Kumba at number 2 is its sister in the park, Montu. This for the longest time was my number 1 coaster. It's just so perfect, so smooth, so intense, gives very consistent rides, the elements are all great, the inversions are phenomenal, so fun, and it's really all I could ask for, but unfortunately it has been dethroned. And coming in at number 1 is Twisted Colossus. For the longest time, this was my number 1 bucket list coaster, so finally getting to ride it this summer was fantastic. My first ride was at the last ride of the night for me. I got on in the back row, and I got a double dual night ride. It couldn't have been any more perfect. Right when I hit the second left hill, I looked at my friend and I said, new number 1. I knew it then. I had never felt airtime like this. It is standing. You are just absolutely thrown out of your seat. The ejector is crazy good. The restraints are pretty comfortable too. But the best elements on this ride are the green side 0G stall and the underrated green side high 5 element, where if you're in the left seat, you are just launched out of your seat. It's everything I could ask for in a ride. It's smooth, it's fun, it's intense. It might not be the most marathonable because it could just hurt your thighs from that airtime, but wow, it is just perfect for me, and it's going to be hard to beat this ride. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.